Hey everyone, welcome to the bass drum technique lesson series. In this first lesson, we're going to talk about the different techniques that I use for singles and doubles. I just want to go into some detail as far as the techniques that I use. The majority of the exercises are not technique dependent. Okay, so that means whether you play heel down, heel up, however you play doubles, however you play singles, that's not going to matter when we get into the exercises. The exercises are designed to help you develop whatever technique you decide to use. So I didn't want to necessarily create any exercises that were specific for, heel up players, because then I'm leaving out, every one of you who might play heel down. So these exercises are designed just to develop whatever technique you decide to use. So keep that in mind as we move forward. All right, so let's talk about single strokes first, all right? There's basically two different ways that I approach single strokes. Heel down, where the heel is on the footboard. In fact, the entire foot is on the footboard, and you're just pivoting your ankle to play the single notes. Right, so the whole weight of your leg is on the pedal. I play into the bass drum, whether I'm doing singles or doubles, so you can see that the bass drum beater stays on the drum head after I hit the note. This is going to be the same for singles and doubles, no matter what technique I use. But there are some people who release the beater off the head after the stroke. And that takes a little bit more control to do that, but the reason they do that is it allows the head to resonate more. You get actually a fuller tone. These are electronic drums, so it's not going to make any difference either way. But if you're playing an acoustic kit, you actually do get kind of a bigger tone if you allow the bass drum beater, to come off of the drum head. For me, I feel more balanced when I can actually hit the head and leave the bass drum beater there. That's just how I've always played. So that's the way I approach things. But just keep that in mind. If you're playing heel up or heel down, you can play into the bass drum head, or you can allow it to release off the head. But in either case, for heel down, singles, I'm just using my ankle, okay? Think of it just like a wrist stroke, okay? The leg isn't really involved other than the fact that, you just have the weight of your leg on the pedal. Even as I get faster, I'm still pivoting at my ankle. And in fact, if you do this right, you'll really kind of feel your muscles working at the front of your shins here. So if you're not used to it, you do that for a little while, you're really going to feel it in your shins, because your ankles and then kind of those muscles that are in your shins, the front part of your leg, those are what make that motion work. So that's heel down for singles, pretty straightforward. Heel up, a little more involved. I'm using my entire leg, and I rest my foot on kind of more the toes, and not the tip toes, but kind of where the toes meet the foot. So kind of that padding, the balls of your feet there at the front of your foot. If you can see, if I'm just kind of in a resting, relaxed position, my heel is just a few inches up off of the footboard. It's not way up here, because I actually have to flex my leg to do that. I'm just kind of in a relaxed state. And again, it's just the heel is a few inches off the footboard. To me, this is a relaxed position. Bass drum is against the head once again. And usually I will put my foot somewhere on these DW pedals anyway, somewhere right on that DW logo at the top. Sometimes I might be covering it, sometimes I might be a little below it, but usually I'm right about there, and that's going to be about 3/4 of the way up the footboard. This is going to be an individual preference. It's going to depend really on a lot of things, on the pedal you're using, on the shoes you're using. It's going to depend on how tall you are. all of those things are going to come into play, and your seat height. All those things will come into play as far as, where you're comfortable playing your bass drum strokes, where you're comfortable putting your foot. For me, again, it's right about where that DW is. All right, now when I do the single stroke with heel up, I'm using the whole leg, all right, initially. We're going to talk about slower notes. I'm using the whole leg, and the whole leg is coming up, and then I'm pushing the leg, along with my foot back into the footboard. The foot never comes off the footboard, and actually when I'm playing heel down, that's the same. The foot never comes off the footboard. You don't want to, it'd be like, letting your fingers come off the stick. You lose control as soon as you do that. So you want to learn to have your foot go along with the footboard no matter what technique you're using. Right? So the whole leg is involved. And notice, as I lift my leg, my heel does come up higher. It comes away from the footboard more. But notice my toes are still on the pedal. They never leave. In fact, that's a good exercise right there to kind of go slow, stop at the top, where your leg is lifted, toes are still on the pedal, and then come back down, play your note. That's how I do single strokes with my foot. This is for slower single strokes. At a certain point, though, because you're using so much of your leg, as opposed to heel down, you're really just using the ankle. With heel up, because you're using your entire leg, you're going to reach a threshold. Just like with wrists, we talked about this in the technique lesson series. You reach a threshold where if you want to play faster, you have to modify the technique. So with heel up for singles, the modification happens where eventually I'm just lifting my leg up, again, kind of that, just to the point where the beater is a few inches off the head, toes are still on the pedal, and then I'm going to start utilizing my ankle strokes, really just like as if I were playing heel down. But my heel is up. All right, and as soon as I hit that last note, my leg goes down into that kind of resting home position where my heel is only a few inches off the ground. So that's, with heel up, it's a little bit more involved. Not so much for slower singles, but as you get going to faster singles, as you start playing faster singles, you do have to make an adjustment. Otherwise, you're going to hit a point where you can't move your entire leg as fast as you may want to, So that's why you streamline it. Get to a point where now you're not utilizing your entire leg. You switch to ankle, but the heel is still up, all right? So let me start slow. I'll speed up so you can kind of see that transition. You can see that as I get faster at a certain point, I start utilizing a little bit of my ankle, and then more and more and more, and pretty soon it's pretty much all ankle, where my legs just kind of elevated a bit. Speaking of which, for heel up players, that's a great exercise because you have to get used to kind of balancing, especially if you're doing a lot of hi-hat stuff or double bass stuff. A good exercise is to just get used to that. Where your leg is elevated. If you're not used to this, it's not going to take long before you're gonna start to get tired. But you want to work through that and build up that endurance. Do it with the other leg, all right? And get used to what it's like to have your leg elevated like that. Because if I'm doing singles for an extended amount of time, fast singles with heel up, I have to get used to that. Not only having my leg elevated like that, so the endurance of being able to do that for long periods of time, also the balance involved with that. whatever it may be, now you're getting into some balance issues. So you want to make sure you have a comfortable seat height. I'm about parallel. My legs are parallel to the ground. Some people sit higher, some people sit lower. I think that's really a matter of preference. But again, just get used to kind of that elevated position where your leg is elevated, and get used to using your muscles in that way. So once again, heel up, singles. Slow, I'm using my whole leg. As I get faster, I start transitioning to the ankle.